Hello, good afternoon.
Hi
Hi,
there.
Perrie.
Hi, Sophie.
So we have a slightly different topic today. So this is all about the bank of mum and dad. But before we get into it, let's cue VT and then we can get chatting. So the
A
bank of
big
mum and dad,
problem,
Perrie?
isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a big issue
So,
for some families, isn't it? Because actually everyone wants their own space, but it can be a challenge.
oh, absolutely. And everybody wants their own space. The family obviously wants to gift, and there's that pressure as well when you maybe hear other people's stories and you hear other people gifting that it's a natural thing that you compare yourself. So it's a bit of a delicate topic, we'll say.
Hmm.
So the 34.22 million pounds Fife Bank of Mum and Dad in 2025. And we're going to discuss whether it is a blessing or is it a barrier. And people have mixed opinions and mixed views. If there is anything, if you have any comments, questions, feel free to put them in the comments, even if you can't watch this live. And we will come back to you because we know that this is going to be one of the topics where there's going to be a split view of it, definitely.
Hmm.
So, in today's Fife property market, the bank of mum and dad kind of remains a powerful force, and it's only grown more influential, we'll say, for whether it be first-time buyers. Parental help is not just a boost. Sometimes it can be that. Sometimes that is all that you can rely on. Maybe you don't have your own kind of deposit or savings behind you, so you really are relying on that bank of mum and dad, or even if it's grandma and granddad, as I would call them. So whether it be, that family kind of helping hand, it's often the key to the front door. But the question is it a sign of generosity or is it a symptom of something much deeper that's going on in our housing system?
And that's the key question, isn't it? And I think there is a deeper thing in the housing system. I think there's a lack of social housing.
Yep.
I think that the values of properties to purchase for first time buyers are sometimes out with the remits of some
Mm-hmm.
first time buyers. So that's a
Yep.
challenge. But actually, just the actual availability of property as well is proven a challenge, isn't it? And if we look at certain areas within Fife, obviously there's pockets that are very different to others. But if we
Mm-hmm.
look at Fife, we're talking through K1 to K112, and then we're looking through K14 to K16. The Bank of Mum and Dad has given, as you said, £34 million worth of deposit contributions in the last 12 months to Fife first time buyers.
Wow.
That's a massive amount of money to be spending. The
Mm-hmm.
typical Fife first time buyer property now costs just over £300,000. That's not attainable for a lot of people, is it? So how do you cope with that? When you think the average price in Scotland is around about 180,000. So there are
Okay.
definitely pockets within Fife that are more extreme. Levenmouth around that area is more affordable, but you go towards the St Andrews area, etc., then
Mm-hmm.
actually that 300,000 plus is not an unrealistic price for people to be expected to pay for their first home, is it?
No, absolutely not. It's all relative for the area.
Mm-hmm. Very much so. And I think the reason that the Bank of Mum and Dad have to help with that is that lenders still only ask for a minimum of a 5% deposit, but actually the average deposit at the moment is over 16%. So if you think of that average house price and then
Mm-hmm.
you're expected to come up with 16% of that, and actually reality is it's probably more than 16% because that's assuming that we're looking at home report value. And
Correct.
properties are still selling over that as well. So as well as coming up with your 5/16% deposit, you're also having to come up, if you're a first time buyer, with the money that you may have to pay over it. So if the house is at 300,000, you buy it for 310, as well as that deposit money, you've got to come up with that other 10,000, haven't you? And that's that's just not realistic for some people. And I think that's why lots of people have got stay-at-home adults, because actually the affordability is a bit of a struggle, isn't it?
Absolutely, because there's also an element, it probably doesn't stop there. They'll gift that initial deposit, but then actually if it's a property that then needs work done to it as well, 9 times out of 10, mum and dad are probably then also going to fund the new bathroom, the new kitchen, and the works that need done inside as well. Again, because first-time buyers don't have that cash sitting there to be able to do the necessary works required to properties. Because obviously walking into a property that is completely done and not needing to do a thing will have a higher price point, which is out of the affordability range, or they'll get snapped up by somebody who is able to offer a large amount over. It's just not achievable. So mum and dad probably then have to help even when you've got the keys and got through the front door to get it up to standard as well. And that's something, and imagine if we were to add that into this, so we'd say 34 million is a big number. Imagine then what's spent when you actually get in the front door.
Exactly. I think as well, what that means really for many Fife buyers that are coming up with an average deposit is what we're saying there. So if they're coming up for 16% on those averages, you're looking at an average deposit of about 49,000 on that price of a property. But a sizable 21,000 of that is being provided by the parents, i.e. Bank of Mum and Dad that we're speaking about. And the parents are having to do that because with all the best will in the world, you know, you could be staying at home till you're in your late 20s, early 30s. And actually, you've probably done a pretty good job to save 20 grand. In today's world, you know, because your chances are you've had to run a car, you've got a full-time job, you're a busy person, you're trying to have a social life as well. So saving that sum's quite an achievable thing, and it's a credit to the people that have done it. And it must be very frustrating for them that actually they can't then move forward without that help from someone else. But at least they feel that they're contributing towards it. So I think whilst help from families is undeniably valuable, and often it's given with love as well, isn't it? Let's be honest. You know, we all do it to help our families. That's what we do. But it's created a bit, as you said in the opening there, it has created a little bit of a divide, because then some families can do it, some families can't. And so there's definitely a split there. And so when we talked earlier on about the fact that is there something else going on in the markets and the housing structure, yeah, I think there is, and there's a complete lack of housing for young people. You know, you and I are different generations, Sophie, but certainly when I was younger, you know, you never thought about not having your first home. It was quite easy to just make that happen. You know, I bought my first apartment in Leven. It was £27,000. You know, my deposit was next to nothing, and that's just not a viable option now. And even for those who maybe didn't want to go down the buying route, you know, even renting was something that was there for you, and you were able to do it, and it was quite simplistic, and you could go ahead and get something from the council. You got yourself registered, and it was easy to do. But it just gets harder and harder now because everything's getting more and more expensive.
Absolutely. And I think it is when you, as you say, mentioned in different generations, it is when you hear whether you speak about it or even Jim speaks about it or anybody speaks about it, and they say how much the property was worth when they were getting their first home, and then you compare it now, it's just worlds apart. It really, really is.
And affordable housing is an issue, and I think that's where that divide comes from, doesn't it? But you know, those lucky enough to receive that, fantastic if you're getting that support and you're able to move forward, and you know, you're not wondering then and left thinking, you know, how am I ever going to get my home? How can I raise my own family? So it's great that your families are able to do that, but you know, it is still a challenge for many people, isn't it?
Absolutely, because when you think there's over half of first-time buyers under 35 across the UK now rely on that parental help in some form. And it's not just lump sums anymore. Some parents are even going to the option of leveraging their own homes to then springboard their children into property ownership. Others are then looking at options like joint mortgages, or potentially acting as guarantors as well. So there are other routes. They are varied, but they all rely on one thing and all have the same factor, and it's having access to wealth in the first place. That is the key factor here. This kind of growing reliance on family wealth to secure housing has led one commentator to coin the phrase, you might have to help me out with that word, Perrie.
Inheritocracy. So it's like
There we
basically
go.
inheritance. But it's like the aristocracy with inheritance. So inheritocracy.
I have not seen that word before, and I got to it and I thought, nope.
But it is fun, isn't it? And you're actually relying on your family being successful to allow you to have success and have a home. And it's quite, to me, in my generation, because I'm an oldie, I find that quite shocking that actually you have to have that fortune within your world to have a home. You know, I think everyone's entitled to have a home. So I think there's definitely a divide there in that affordability stakes. But our government's not doing enough about it, and they're not building enough houses, and that's creating a huge problem. And they're not building enough affordable homes. And when they do build the affordable homes, what they tend to be building is an affordable home that's on an estate that has lots of new build properties, and the affordable homes usually are the block of flats. And they're done so that the builder can get the planning. So even those people who want to have a nice home end up actually in an apartment without a garden. They may have 2 bedrooms, they may want to have a family, but they're still a little bit stuck because they can't take their children out and to play in the garden. So there's, you know, when we talked earlier on about that, is there an issue with housing? There definitely is an element of that, where actually there's a bit of a failing there on our government to build affordable housing. And builders as well, rightly or wrongly, you know, they're in it for the money. When they're building homes, they're not building 2-bedroom semi-detached or 1-bedroom semi-detaches or terraced houses that people can afford. They're building 3, 4, 5-bedroom detached homes.
Yep, absolutely.
And they're the ones that are in that excess pot of like 300 plus. And, you know, where does that deposit come from if you want to have one of those homes? Unless you're in that fortunate position. So there's definitely a drift there in regards to what's accessible to all. And I think a bit of an unfairness, to be honest. But that's just my personal opinion.
It is. It's almost like because you necessarily don't have the readily funds available and you maybe can't get onto that property ladder, there is an option there, but actually you're getting the short end of the stick. And it is, as you mentioned, potentially a 2-bedroom flat with 0 garden space and you're, you know, crammed in because, as you say, they've just put up a block of flats.
Yeah.
So it is almost like you're getting the short end of the stick for something that you're just trying to get yourself a head start and you just want to get onto the property market.
Exactly. And that's the thing, it's that milestone in your life, isn't it? It's part of your growth as you're growing. You want to be able to, you know, you meet your partner, you want to have a home, you want to grow a family. So from getting on the property ladder to starting your family, it's, you know, increasingly it's determined not by what you earn, or even what you learn. You know, you can educate yourself and get a great job and still be earning a good salary. But a lot of the time that inheritance-ocracy that we spoke about, it's also a lot about what did you inherit or what has your family got that they can pass on to you. And more often these days, we're seeing a lot of early gifting. So we're seeing people putting properties in trust, etc. as well, so that they can gift to their families. Because again, there's a little bit there in regards to inheritance taxes and also elderly people who maybe need future care, who are having to sell their homes, etc. So there's a whole mix there of where it just doesn't work necessarily for some. But before we get, we're getting a bit heavy here, but before we get too misty-eyed about it, I mean, the good old days, it's worth remembering that the average first-time buyer age now is nationally the age of 34. When I bought my first apartment, I was 22. So, there's a big difference there, I guess. Is that because people now have access to more things and so they enjoy the freedom of single life, careers, travel, all those things are accessible? Yeah, so all of that's accessible to people, isn't it? So I think if your average is at the age of 34 nationally, and it's been between 32 and 34 really since the millennial, to be honest. It's no wonder that, house pricing at that level is what we're seeing first time buyers going to, because we just haven't really kept up with the house price market. Rent is also eaten into savings. So if people perhaps have not been able to buy and they've gone into rental, they're paying renting, and that's eaten into their savings. So it's it's depreciating what they potentially would have as deposits. And as I say, the deposits now are higher than they've ever been in regards to your deposit on your mortgage. And I think that's why mum and dad are having to come into play a little bit.
Absolutely. There's a lot of contributing factors, definitely. And then obviously we've then also touched on, we speak about how you potentially inherit it, but then we also speak about how people are living longer these days as well. So actually maybe when you would have inherited it in the past, but obviously people are living longer these days, which is great. And obviously we're not wanting to be morbid here, but so you're not inheriting it like you would. So actually then you're waiting even longer. So that's why people do gift, I suppose. But for many, the bank of mum and dad isn't a nice to have. It's perhaps only route. Or was that Jock again?
That's Jock again, getting in on the action.
Quite right. Put his 2 cents in. It is sometimes the only route to buying a Fife home or a home anywhere, perhaps, but particularly a Fife home. But here's the thing, we need to obviously, as we say, there would be split opinions on this, but you don't have to have wealthy parents to buy a home. It might feel that way. Absolutely, it might feel that way, especially when the headlines are full of six-figure gifts and inheritance windfalls, and you potentially see on social media stories, and you see potentially people within your circle or even out with your circle, and you do think your only option, I need to have wealthy parents. Yet there are still 95% mortgages available. And there is a growing number of lenders that are reintroducing kind of innovative products like Springboard or family offset mortgages. And that's where maybe speaking to a mortgage advisor is a good option to think about. Don't just go straight to your bank. Think about speaking with a mortgage advisor, and obviously we can do a referral for you, but they have so much more of the market available, and they can find you deals and potential loopholes to obviously get you on that property ladder. So it's definitely worth exploring that. There's also things like some local building societies and high street names are also offering 100% loans in specific circumstances, but this is where you need to do your research and speak with a professional. Definitely.
Absolutely. I think that's true. Getting that professional advice is going to be really key to your success, and whether or not, because you may say at the moment, I think you want to get on the market, but you can't afford to buy a property. But actually the reality is you may well be able to do so with, as you say, the products that are out there. Schemes like even shared ownership, lifetime ISAs continue to support those who are also perhaps not got that large lump sum of money. So those are ways that people can still get on that property ladder and potentially get their first home. So really important to explore those avenues. And you're right, a broker will have so much available to you in regards to the product access that they have. Your bank only offers what your bank has. A broker has access to probably about 100 times what your bank can offer you. So definitely it's worth exploring that, because you might be pleasantly surprised actually what could come out of that for you.
Definitely. And it's interesting that we're actually doing this topic, because yesterday I was actually valuing a property that is shared ownership, and it's in St Andrews, and they went down this route just because they wanted to be in St Andrews and get on the ladder. And actually the property worth and actually what they had to pay as their part is what they paid. You'd be paying more for that for a 2-bed in Leven, but yet they've managed to get a 2-bed semi-detached parking, gorgeous garden within St Andrews, walking distance to all their amenities. And that's the route that they went down, because actually then in a year's time they can then go on and purchase more of the property, and actually they could purchase it in its entirety. But that's the route that they went down. So it's interesting that was only yesterday evening I was at that valuation.
Yeah, so there's definitely choices out there. You're not completely limited, and it's not all doom and gloom. There are solutions there. It's just about understanding them and getting that good advice, isn't it?
Absolutely.
But at the same time, the Fife rental market's seen a bit of a shift in sentiment as well, hasn't it?
Absolutely,
Not just house selling. I think we've seen that in the shift in there. Increasingly, renting is viewed as maybe a failure as such, because you've not owned your own home, or it's, for me, actually, it does give people flexible lifestyle choices. Some younger Fife residents are opting to rent for longer terms because actually they don't want the responsibility of owning a home. They're focusing on their careers. They're saving strategically for all that deposit money that we've just spoken about, and potentially for their future planning. Or even, they're maybe thinking that there is an inheritance option there that's going to come later in their lives. So why tie ourselves to something now that's going to maybe cost us too much? So I think that stigma is failing, is it's fading away. I don't think that's really as much of an issue as it first has seemed. because people are just looking at a bit smarter solutions. And actually, when you're focusing on your career, it just gives you that flexibility, especially in our location in Fife. You know, you could be working in Edinburgh, renting in Edinburgh, but your long-term goal may be to own a house across the water in Fife. But there's ways that you can make that happen over time, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely, definitely, yeah. It's, as you said, it's not all doom and gloom.
I
Definitely
think there's
not.
a cultural shift as well. You know, more and more young people are openly acknowledging the support that they've got. I think, you know, without their parents helping, they're quite happy to be open about the fact that their parents have helped them. I think also, I think younger people nowadays as well are voicing their frustration more about the fact that it is an uneven playing field. And that's a good thing, because actually that'll get our governments maybe kickstarting and doing something about it, because people have got a voice, and that makes a difference. You know, those who shout loudest usually get heard and all that, to quote my mum.
Yes.
But I think that's important. And we're not just talking about gaps between generations anymore, I don't think. We're talking about gaps within generations as well, I think. So I think it's really important that, you know, people can voice it, but also it's important that you get that educated understanding of how you perhaps can go about it for yourself as well. Sometimes we don't always do that, and we jump in, don't we, without actually really understanding what it's all about. So I think that's important.
Definitely. So then, in context, it's clear that the Bank of Mum and Dad is both a lifeline and a lightning rod, we could say. Yes, it helps people buy homes, but it does also kind of highlight and it reinforces the wealth divides. And that's not a criticism, absolutely not, of those who give or receive help. What do they say? Never knock a gift horse in its mouth. Is that not the
Yeah,
phrase?
that's it.
So it simply is just the reality of a system where property ownership is becoming kind of increasingly out of reach without that support. But do you have any final thoughts or key takeaways at all here?
I think for me, my key takeaways are, I think as a Fife parent, you want to help. You're not alone in helping your family. But before gifting a deposit, have the thoughtful conversation. Is it a gift or is it a loan? What are the expectations around that? Will it affect your retirement and your care needs when you get older as a parent? And also, how does it, is it going to be a long-term plan? Are they always forever going to be in that home? You know, what does that look like in the future for them? So I think it's really just important to understand at the outset, what are the rules around the gifting, if any. There might be none and you're quite happy just to do it, but I think it's good to get that understanding beforehand. And if you're a buyer without family support, don't lose hope. Explore the schemes that we've spoken about. There definitely are good options out there. Look into chatting with your banks, building societies. Get a broker as well who's really got access to everything. They have got so much access to products that you probably don't even realise exist at the moment. Ask your estate agent questions as well. You know, there's still paths to ownership. If it's something you're looking at, speak to a professional who can really guide you through it and give you some good advice.
Definitely. Well, there we go. As we said, it was a different kind of topic this week. Slightly brief one, but it is obviously it's a contributing factor to the Fife property market. So absolutely, we're here to discuss it. If anybody has any questions, comments, your views, please put them and we will come back to you. Or message us
And actually,
privately.
if you've experienced it, how did it work for you? I think that would be really great as well to give that feedback, because there may be some families out there who are considering this as an option, but actually not really sure how that's going to work, and how the evenness within the family makes it work. So again, if it's something you've experienced, share it with us. It'd be really great for us to be able to share that with others.
Absolutely.
Brilliant.
Well, there we go. Thanks so much, Perrie. That's us for another week, and we will see you all soon. Take care.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Now.